I don't know. I mean, this is just such a dead, nothing period of the NFL calendar. I mean, it's after the Super Bowl. It's before the NFL Combine. I mean, there's just literally nothing going on right now. So, yeah, I mean, what will happen over the next couple months is Marcus Mariota's game tape will be, evaluated up and down by people who know what they're looking at, people who don't know what they're looking at. And you're just going to hear all kinds of varying opinions on, what he is as a player. Is he good? Is he bad? Would he fit with this team? Would he fit with that team? And it's just going to be all over the map. And that's just really kind of what the NFL draft has become. And the NFL draft, increasing in popularity is a great thing for the sport, and it gives, fans of the NFL, something to look forward to every year this time of year and into March and April and after the draft, of course, in May. But, I mean, everything right now is just noise. Personally, I like Marcus Mariota, but I don't have the first clue what NFL evaluators think of him at this point, and I don't think that many other people do either. So I think a lot of what you're hearing right now is just kind of noise, and we really won't know where he's going to go until we get a little bit closer to the draft. But in February, as what you just pointed out earlier with Johnny Manziel and Teddy Bridgewater and Geno Smith, that nobody really knows where these guys are going to go yet. Some of that information will leak out as we get a little closer, but right now nobody really has a clue. Yeah,
and that's the interesting part about it is that at one point a guy like Geno Smith was thought to be the number one pick in the draft. A guy like Teddy Bridgewater was thought to be the number one pick in the draft. So much movement can happen. And, Jimmy, a lot of it happens because of these guys' combines and more so for a quarterback, their pro day. Is that what the big thing's going to be for Mariota? Because who knows if he even goes to the combine. It might not be a good thing for him to even go to that now with all the criticism of him out there. His pro day is pretty much going to give you a better indication of where he could fall.
Yeah, quarterbacks in the past have traditionally, guys that are going to be drafted like high, it's common for them to just skip the combine, not throw at it anyway. They'll go to the combine and they'll run, but they'll skip the throwing portion of it because they don't want to be evaluated throwing to receivers that they're unfamiliar with in like different environments. They'd rather be comfortable throwing to, their teammates who they know their speed, they know, what to expect from them coming out of their breaks and so on and so forth. So they don't want to get a misreading on, throwing to guys who they're completely unfamiliar with. And I understand that. I think that overall that stuff is a little bit overrated and they're going to do what their agents tell them to do. So, I mean, that you're right. I mean, the guys like that might skip the combine and just be more interested in their pro day. The Senior Bowl is another place where you can get a good look at players and how how they work, how they practice on a day-to-day basis, how they play during the week of practice and in the game. Typically, you won't see the top of the line quarterbacks compete at that either. Marcus Mariota was a guy who opted out of participating at the Senior Bowl. So, I mean, there will be guys who skip that stuff. But again, I mean, we're just so early in the process, but nobody really knows where these guys are going to go just yet.
Absolutely. And Jimmy Kempski's with us, PhillyVoice.com, covering the Eagles. Trey Thomas was on with us the other day, and he had talked about the Eagles' run game and the problems they had. I was kind of interested by what he said. He said he thought that teams figured them out, that they were too easy to figure out. And is that something that kind of makes you perk your ears up a little bit about this team? Because a lot of people talking about, well, all right, it's the second year now. People see you on tape. And he said, well, I really thought that people figured us out. Is that something that's concerning?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually hadn't heard that he said that. My mindset on the Eagles offense was that I don't think they really do anything all that complicated. From day one that Chip Kelly stepped in here, they run a lot of the same plays over and over again, and it's just more about execution and speed than it is, anything, sort of extremely creative that they're doing from an X's and O's standpoint. It is a little bit interesting to hear him, say that. He would certainly know better than me, seeing as he was a coach on the team, whereas I'm just an outsider media guy who's writing about them. So I think that is certainly something to kind of perk your ears up about. I don't know if necessarily they still can't succeed as a running game going forward. Obviously, a lot of people have pointed to the offensive line injuries that they had throughout especially during the early part of the season last year. I thought at times they did run the ball effectively, but they were not as good. Certainly last year they weren't anywhere near as effective as a running team as they were in 2013 when they led the league both in rushing yards per game and yards per carry. So, maybe there is something to it. The teams have sort of figured it out. I think it's more about the speed of the offense, where teams across the NFL as a whole have sort of adopted the mentality of trying to go faster. So when a lot of teams are, trying to go faster, defenses are used to seeing it a lot more. So I think defenses have adapted to, offenses trying to be faster, and as a side effect, that is sort of hurt the Eagles in the sense that teams are more that they see a lot more of it and have been a little bit better prepared for the Eagles' speed. So yeah, I think there is something to what he's saying there. I'd have to hear exactly what he said to comment further on whether I agree with him or not. But certainly he was a coach on the team last year. He would know better than I would.
We'll see if we can get that bite for you here, Jimmy. Another thing that he said, and he mentioned that Foles is a good player. He didn't have any problem with Foles, but this debate has gone on forever, whether or not you need a mobile, running, quote-unquote quarterback. His opinion, he said, look, if I'm an offensive lineman on this team, this offense that we're running, that guy's got to be able to be more mobile. And I thought that was the first time that somebody that was inside that team really kind of made that apparent that, yeah, it could work. We're going to throw for a lot of yards. We're going to put up a lot of points and yards. But if this wants to work the way that I think Chip wants it to work, Trey saying, you got to have somebody back there that can sidestep, do something, he said, because he's just standing back there, and that's going to, in the end, catch up to this team.
Yeah, it's interesting that the two quarterbacks that Chip Kelly's really brought into the organization from the outside have been Matt Barkley and Mark Sanchez. They did re-sign Michael Vick when Chip got here in 2013, although he was kind of sort of already with the team. But those are the two guys that they brought in from the outside, and certainly neither of those guys are, fast, mobile quarterbacks. Sanchez has a little bit of athleticism, but you're certainly not going to mistake either of those two guys for, Usain Bolt. So, the two guys that they brought in aren't necessarily fast guys. So I don't know that Chip Kelly's just sort of looking specific. I mean, I don't think it's an absolute quote-unquote must-have for a quarterback that can run and do those kinds of things, but certainly a quarterback that can do those things brings an added dimension to what they do offensively, and certainly would, if you can get a guy that does those kinds of things, they're better fit than a guy that's kind of a statue in the pocket.
Yeah, and that's really what he mentioned. And he kind of talked about the same thing on the other side of the ball, Jimmy, where he mentioned that, yes, our secondary needed some help. We got beat a lot, he said, but quite frankly, these other teams have the ability to sidestep, keep plays alive, and he thought that hurt them more, than people realized. And he was kind of surprised by the way, obviously he was a little surprised that he got let go and that his linebackers had done much better, but you wonder, because he talked about their defense and he said he thought that they didn't do enough of these elaborate blitzes to help out their secondary as much. And you wonder if this team, because they got to the quarterback a lot, right? I mean, this is a team that thought of around the league that got to the quarterback pretty good. Did they not?
They did. They all have sacks. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I'd actually have to. I know in 2013 they were second to last in the NFL in terms of sacks per opposing drop back. Now their sack number wasn't all that bad, but it was skewed because they faced more snaps than any other team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with 2014, where they're facing an inordinate number of snaps on the defensive side of the ball because they like to go so fast on offense, and they score quickly and they go 3 and out quickly, right, when they don't score. So the defense is on the field a lot. Defense also doesn't. At least in 2013, they did a really bad job getting off the field on third down, where teams are converting, those third downs and extending drives. So the defense has been on the field a ton. So the sacks, at least the number of sacks, can be a little bit misleading. I actually have to look at the number of sacks per opposing dropback to get a better feel for how they compare with the rest of the league. But yeah, I mean, certainly the outside linebackers were better this season than I thought people were expecting them to be. The defensive line was the strength of the team. I thought their front seven as a whole was a lot better. So to some degree, I'll disagree with Trey there that they didn't do a good job getting to the quarterback. But I don't know if that was necessarily his point. I think the point that you said he made was that they didn't show a lot of exotic looks, and that I kind of will agree with. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about a defense here that didn't even have a dime package in 2013.
Wow,
It's something that they introduced in the offseason in 2014. So I think. And that kind of makes sense. I think they kind of wanted to get the basics down because they were switching from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense, and they had a lot of guys whose skill sets sets didn't necessarily match or fit in with what you typically expect from guys in a 3-4 defense. So they've been slowly building the roster to fit to fit that 3-4 scheme a little bit better. And then of course this will be the third year of that 3-4 scheme. So you think that they're going to add a little bit more going forward. But yeah, I mean, they've been kind of taking baby steps in terms of adding things here and there. Again, like I said, they only had a dime defense in 2014.
It's unbelievable.
They only added it during the 2014 offseason. So it'll grow slowly, but I will agree that they haven't really shown the exotic blitzes and a lot of the different creative scheme things that they can do in that 3-4 scheme that a lot of other teams are doing around the league.
Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, covers the Eagles here. Another interesting thing I thought he brought up, and I really wanted to get, your take on this was, he said you could tell there was something going down in the NovaCare Center, so you just kind of kept your head down, hoping you didn't catch a stray bullet, basically suggesting that it was not a great atmosphere in there after the season was over. I don't know how much you were down there after the season was over, but did you get a sense that just maybe something was going down, or was it kind of like a surprise the way that season kind of ended and everything in one full swoop, Roseman's up and Kelly's in charge? Because it sounded like he felt like there was some tension going on there.
Yeah, when we're in the NovaCare Complex there, we're not really just kind of walking around the building wherever we want, like a dog that kind of has a run of the house.
Right.
They kind of keep us quarantined. There's a media room where we're allowed to be, and if it's lunchtime after practice, then they'll bring us to the cafeteria or to the auditorium if there's an event in there, or out to the practice field if we're allowed in there, or to the locker room if we're allowed in there during specific times. But we're not allowed to just walk around and kind of get a feel for the atmosphere of the place. So that's not really something I can necessarily count on from personal experience. But yeah, I think clearly there's something to it in that there's a little bit of tension there, and maybe some guys who weren't working together well, and like Trey said, kind of expected to get a stray bullet, So there's certainly something going on there, and that's evidenced by a lot of the changes that have happened this offseason in the front office. But as far as what I can comment on from daily day to day, just being in the building, there's really nothing that I can glean from just being there and my interactions with the people in the building.
Well, Jimmy, let's look at some of the decisions that are coming up for the Eagles here. Obviously, I think one of the top ones will be Trent Cole. That's a big number for him, $11.6 million. Yep. Do you think that that's a guy that is in trouble, that may not be back?
Well, there's no chance they're bringing him back at that number. And I forget the exact number I forget the exact amount of money that they'll save if they were to cut him.
8.4.
I think Trent. I'm sorry.
8.4.
8.4. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's just no way that they're not going to take that $8.4 million and go ahead and save that. Trent Cole has commented that he is amenable to working something out that would allow him to continue being with the Eagles. So the Eagles are undoubtedly going to ask him to take a pay cut. Trent Cole and his agent are going to have to figure out if it's worth taking a pay cut or worth sort of just being cut and seeing what he can make in the open market. They have to weigh those two options. But ultimately, I do think that maybe they'll get something done there where he'll take a pay cut and be able to stay with the team.
Jimmy Kempski with us here. PhillyVoice.com is where you can see his Eagles work. How about Cary Williams? He's another interesting guy. I mean, obviously, most people think Fletcher's gone, but are you going to be able to replace both these guys this offseason?
Gone.
Wow, just like that, gone, huh?
I think he's gone. I don't have any definitive inside information on that. But I mean, you cut him, you save $6.5 million off the cap. His cap number in 2015 had to be like $1.86 million, I think. And I just don't think he's worth it. I don't think it's the headache that he can be in the locker room. It's just his play on the field does not warrant him making the kind of money that he's making. He actually has the fourth highest cap number on the entire team. It's crazy. As crazy as that might sound. So I don't see any possible way that they can bring him back at that cap number, not take that $6.5 million in savings and apply that to another player in free agency. So I think he's almost certainly going to be gone, and I think Bradley Fletcher, certainly he's a free agent anyway. I don't think they're going to make any attempt to bring him back either.
All right, how about Herman's? He's a guy that many people thought at the end of the year when he got hurt that might have been the last time we see him. Will that be the last time we see Herman's play for the Eagles?
No, I think he'll be back. his cap number in 2015 is somewhere around $5 million. They save about half that if they were to cut him, so I don't think it's worth it. They don't really have a lot of youth or depth behind, the starters on the offensive line, which is an aging group. Herman's is, when we look at Herman, it's the three guys that are aging. You talk about Jason Peters and Evan Mathis and Todd Herman's. I think Herman's is sort of the quote-unquote oldest of the three, and I'm not talking about number age. I'm talking about in terms of, mileage and just sort of the traditional quote-unquote older offensive lineman in the NFL. I think he sort of fits that profile more than Jason Peters, who's just an athletic freak of nature, and Evan Mathis, who has lower mileage, didn't play a lot early in his career, and again, just an athletic specimen, just crazy freak of nature type guy in the weight room. So I think Herman is the guy that will be gone first, but I think at a minimum he'll be playing with the Eagles in 2015. We'll see about 2016.
Okay, how about Demko Ryan? I think he's an interesting guy too because he's making a lot of money and he's coming off a pretty bad injury, but they don't really have a replacement there, so they got a tough decision with him, don't they?
Yeah, they can put that off for a while though. So I think he's on the hook for $6.9 million, and if they cut him, they recoup all that. So it would be a complete savings there of $6.9 million. But they don't have to do anything with him yet. They can, if they were to draft, let's say, an inside linebacker in the first round, they think that guy can start right away next to Michael Kendricks, then yeah, they're going to cut Demko Ryan or ask him to take a pay cut or whatever it may be. But they don't have to do anything with him yet. They can see how he recovers from his torn Achilles, and when you get closer to training camp and you get to see him on the field, and he just doesn't look anything close to the same guy that he was, then maybe you make a move then, but you don't have to do anything yet. So they're not going to cut him before free agency or before the draft or anything like that. That's the guy that they can kind of play wait and see with.
I think their interesting spot here is at the tight end spot where Casey's making a lot of money, Selleck, and then Ertz might be the best of the three, but because Selleck is still here, he can't get enough time to really make a big impact. So do they have a tough decision at tight end?
Chip Kelly loves Selleck. I think the quote that he said about Selleck was, this is what a Philadelphia Eagle should look like or looks like or whatever. But Chip Kelly just loves Brent. I don't know if you have Brent Selleck's numbers in front of you. I don't know off the top of my head what they are, but certainly his production does not warrant the cap number that he has. Although he is considered far and above the best blocking tight end on the team. Personally, I think Zach Ertz should be playing more than he is. I think he's sort of a guy that's a better weapon and certainly a player that defenses would fear a lot more than being on the field than Brent Selleck would. And then you look at James Casey, who I think his cap number is $4 million heading into 2015. And do you want to mess with him? Like the Eagles had the best special teams unit in the NFL last year, and a big reason for that was the guys that he added, like Casey and Brian Raymond and Chris Maragos, and then even to a lesser degree like undrafted free agent like Trey Burton. All those guys played extraordinarily well in special teams. And yeah, $4 million is a lot of money, but do you want to mess with it? Do you want to subtract a guy that was so critical to the success of that special teams unit, which really won you a lot of games early in the season when Nick Foles wasn't at his best? So yeah, I'd lean toward keeping Casey. That $4 million is a big number, and you save all of it if you cut him. But I would lean toward them staying with Casey, sort of being that special teams, maven, and certainly a guy who provides great depth if something does happen to one of your kids tight ends in front of them.
Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com. Okay, story or non-story, LeSean McCoy?
Ooh,
all right, there's the answer.
I don't know. Yeah, that might be the answer right there. He has a big number, and I'm sure they'd love for him to take at least some kind of pay cut, and there's no way if I know LeSean McCoy, there's just no way that he's going to take a pay cut. He said he'd be open to restructuring, which restructuring has, it's a totally separate thing from taking a pay cut. Basically, restructure is taking some of the money that's on the back end of his deal and guaranteeing it up front. You get a better cap number for the current season, but it basically just kind of pushes off some of the cap pain to future years. So, all it does in terms of LeSean McCoy is it gives him guaranteed, more guaranteed money. It turns some of the non-guaranteed money into guaranteed money. So yeah, any player in the NFL is going to want to restructure. So he's not really doing anybody any favors by restructuring. That's totally in the interest of the players. But in terms of taking a pay cut, I just don't see him do that. So it's going to be up to the Eagles whether they want to keep him at that number or not. If you cut him, what do you have? If Darren Sproles, who's certainly a good weapon, but is not going to be a guy that's ever going to carry the ball more than 10 times a game, and you have Chris Polk, who can't stay on the field. So if you cut him, you do anything, you trade him, whatever you do with LeSean McCoy, you better have another piece in place before you do that, or you're going to go into 2015 without a running back.
All right, a lot of stuff to get into between now and the draft with free agency, and obviously the franchise tag is out. Your thoughts on the Macklin deal? Easier? A lot of people think this is just a second nature. This is going to get done. Do you think that's easier said than done? That this Macklin thing is going to be done in a very easy, smooth fashion?
I think the Eagles would like it to come in an easy, smooth fashion. But the reality is Macklin has a ton of leverage because he had a great season last year. They need him. I mean, you go into 2015 without Macklin, you're talking about Riley Cooper, Josh Huff, and Jordan Matthews being your top three receivers, or whoever else you might add in free agency or the draft. But certainly Macklin is an enormous player to this team, and you lose Macklin, that becomes as big a need as, let's say, cornerback or safety, heading into the draft. So I think they absolutely have to get something done with him. Hopefully you don't have to go and use the franchise tag on him because that's a big number, especially a wide receiver. With so many, big-time wide receivers making a lot of money. I don't know off the top of my head what that wide receiver number is in terms of if you have to franchise.
I would assume it's going to change with Dez and Demarius, right? I mean, those guys, if they get slapped the tag, that's going to make it go up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge number regardless. When you have guys like Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head what that number is, but it's going to be a big number. It's one of the bigger numbers after quarterback for franchise tags. You don't want to have to use a tag on a wide receiver. But, yeah, I mean, they absolutely need him. So smooth and easy, I'm sure the Eagles would love that. But I think Macklin is primed to cash in here. All
right, Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, at Jimmy Kempski on Twitter. As, of course, the Eagles offseason, they begin that free agent period on the 10th of March, and Jimmy will be talking to him throughout that time. Jimmy, appreciate the time as always, man.
Thank you, Mike.